Alliance Live. John Whitfield, Deafblind Scotland. Should I Stay or Should I Go? Part 1, Early Life and Work.
Basically, this is the story of my life, transitioning from a deaf youth to becoming a deafblind adult. So going back to a very early stage of my life, So my journey. I was born deaf with no apparent sight loss. I've worn hearing aids all my life, so right from a very young age, I used to have these big hearing aid boxes with plastic tubes leading into a glass mold, and so very, very obvious. There's no getting away from the fact that I was deaf. I had a hearing impairment. But the interesting thing, you'll see photographs there of me as a very young, pretty young lad, and these are school photographs. Yet they made made my brother and I were both deaf, and they made us take our hearing aids out, so we looked normal. So already there was prejudice, even from a very, very young age. And going through school, it was very difficult as well, because teachers at that time, you either went to a deaf school, but there was no such thing as mainstreaming when we were kids. So the teachers had to adapt to us, or we had to adapt to them. So my lip reading skills became very proficient. But the ironic thing is that many teachers are writing on the blackboard, talking as they're writing with their back to you. So I got very frustrated and I complained to my parents. I was quite fortunate in one respect, is that my grandfather was president of the National Union of Teachers, and he actually brought in the secondary modern education, and he happened to be, staying with us at the time. So he's gone marching into the school as an ex-headmaster himself, got hold of the headmaster in the school, and basically gave him a row about how you should present to kids with the deaf. Ironically, in the 70s, it became mainstream, so deaf people and visually impaired people were included in the everyday school, whereas before it's separate schools for the blind, separate schools for the deaf. So looking back, was that a wise thing not to go to a deaf school? But I'm here, I'm 64, and I cope pretty well. But talking about, as I go through it, it's all about life chances, really. So moving that on. So growing up, because I was deaf, part of my coping strategy was that I had to be the best at sports. So I was involved in rugby, I was involved in football, badminton, you name it, whatever sport was on there. And I always tried my best to beat everybody, because I didn't want to see them as my deafness being any kind of a weakness. It was just a case of I can be better at other things. So commanding respect was one driving force I had. So I was captain for the rugby team, as you can see, and on the back row, second from the end, looking at the screen. You can probably pick me out, beard, long hair, and So rugby. So I commanded respect through sport. The other thing, I grew up in the Yorkshire Dales, so I was very much involved in motorbikes. So people could virtually ride a motorbike before they could walk. So I got involved in scrambling and trial biking. And then lastly, I got involved in production bike racing, which is putting a bike you can buy from the shop, racing on the proper racing track. So this was my old bike. It was a big old Norton Commando 750. But it was a rare version, only 400 were made. So it was kind of an extra chance on the racetrack because it was race developed. So moving that on. But so getting the motorbikes. So I was in my late teens. I was in the racing world. So I had motorbikes. I was a musician. I loved my heavy metal. I was into Black Sabbath and Led Zeppelin and all that kind of stuff. So that was another escapism. Just having that music and just being able to lose yourself in another world of music and the bikes. So that basically, as you can see from the earlier pictures, that was me, long hair, beard. Changed much now, but one of the things back then was the fact that you had an identity. You had a sense of belonging. You were in involved in particular crowds. And of course, I ended up going down into, I was working in the horticultural field, and I'll tell you a little bit about that later. I was working in the field of horticulture, and they sent me to college down in St Albans, and it's a 3-year course, diploma course in St Albans. And so that was me. I was a biker in my leathers, my heavy metal, all that kind of stuff. That's what I was. And then I started getting problems with my eyesight. I was struggling to see in the dark. I was getting more clumsy. I actually crashed the bike a couple more times, which would never have happened in the past before. So I went along to the doctors in St Albans, and basically he sent me to the ophthalmologist, a specialist in the hospital in Hertfordshire. The specialist basically did some tests on me, told me at the age of 19 that I would be totally blind by the age of 40. There's nothing we can do, and he walked away. That was my prognosis, my diagnosis for my future. So now you can see that I had an identity. And the irony that I haven't mentioned was that I'd actually had a place booked in Edinburgh University to become a vet. So there's me, 19, thinking, how can I operate on animals? How can I be a vet? How can I... All the other aspects of coming to terms, the transition of coming to terms with becoming blind as well as deaf, was the, how do I get into a relationship? How do I get a job? Where's my identity gone? Because I can't ride a motorbike anymore. So that was me gone from motorbikes. So it's an extremely difficult time of my life at 19. And that was another, I call this, should I stay or should I go? It's also about crossroads. You come to crossroads in your life, and then you think, which way do I go? Do I just stay, and do I become not pathetic, but just give up perhaps? Or do you fight it on and you just try and look for other methods and coping ways of doing things? Life chances came into place. My parents were divorced when I was very young, but my mother got married again to a doctor. And the unfortunate thing, because he was a doctor, he had contact in the ophthalmology in other parts of the country. So he had come down while I was going through a very bad phase, and basically told me to get in touch with this other ophthalmologist. And he was infinitely better. He did some more thorough tests on me. He actually said that not everybody goes blind by the age of 40. Some do. Some live to the 80s with some central vision. So all this, if I didn't have that help, I look back and I think, where would I be, So I got back into work. So after I did the college, I got a job in a number of hotels. I worked in a nursery situation, the first nursery that sent me to the college. And the interesting thing there was actually a profoundly deaf person working on the site. I was deaf with hearing aids, and it was a horrible thing to say. I didn't classify myself as being deaf. This person was profoundly deaf. He had sign language, British Sign Language, as his first language and only language. And not everybody, but quite a few of the workers there were really quite nasty to him. They were calling him dummy. They were calling him, idiot. They thought he was stupid because he couldn't talk to them, And it transpired because the nursery was so big. There's a picture on the right. This is another nursery I worked in, but you can see it's a glass house, but it's massive. And people are shouting from one end of the greenhouse to the other. And I couldn't hear. So I was given the wrong answers. And then I was tarred with the same brush as the other person that was working there. I won't give his name. And they started calling me dummy and stupid because I had my hearing aids. And so they just said, I'm deaf. But they didn't realize there were different degrees of deafness. So I became extremely angry, and I took a number of these people to task, and because I'm big enough and ugly enough to handle myself. The other chap wasn't, unfortunately. So I was defending the other chap, I was defending myself, and I went up to the management and complaining bitterly about this. They were sympathetic. I spoke about my difficulties, how it could be made better. That's another chance, if you think a chance in life, that the management of that nursery were very understanding. And that nursery then sent me to St Albans, where I did my degree in horticulture. Came back from having done my 3 years and going through the transition, ended up working for a nursery in Cheltenham, which is this, the two pictures there. So I grew all the bedding plants for Cheltenham Borough Council, winning, I was there 6 years and we won 7 awards, gold medals for the best hanging basket displays, bedding displays, the nurseries and parks, and even in the year we won competition. So that did a lot of good for my well-being, my standing in life, if you like. But at that time, even then, I didn't have any support. I just used I tried to command respect through my physical ability. So I was always trying to work harder, faster, stronger than anybody else. So people overlooked the deafness. The blindness was coming into play because when it started getting dark, I was becoming more blind due to the lack of light. I couldn't see in the dark. So when it got dark in the winter months, I was actually thought I was becoming a liability. I thought I was becoming, I'm going to have a cause of an accident for the lorries and the forklift trucks and all sorts of things buzzing around the place. So I came to the decision then to hand my notice in and move. I'd lived in Scotland before, so I moved back to Scotland and been there ever since. Got married. So a year of being in Scotland, I became still crazy. I needed things to do. I needed challenges. I needed things to push me. And just sitting around staring at the walls was just no good for me at all. So I enrolled on a college course to get me into university. It was an access course. And it was then I started realizing, there is help about. So there were certain grants you could get, equipment, there's help that you could get from note-taking. So I went from college very, very quickly, got into University of Dundee. I actually started to study social work, thinking I could be of a help to people in a similar situation that I was. But the social work, again, it was probably discrimination, but they had something at the beginning, something like 100 students in the first year. And in the second year, they had to whittle it down to something like 30. And one of the reasons they said to me that I couldn't do the job was that I would have to go into like flats and go into, difficult areas. And because I couldn't drive and because I was on my own, they just said I wouldn't be a suitable candidate. In some way that I should have chased that further, but I thought actually I didn't want to be involved in social work. There's too many politics that I couldn't deal with. So I stuck on with psychology, got my honours degree in psychology. And again, that was enabled by the help from people who could do note-taking for me. So there were actually students that I could give them some money from a grant. So they would type up their notes to make it into an accessible format so I could keep up with the course. I graduated from there, but my dissertation was, again, cooking strategies for people with a dual sensory impairment like myself, looking at others and how they coped. So I got involved with Deafblind UK Scottish branch and Drina O'Malley, who was in charge, and I met many deafblind people. There was actually a conference in Dundee, funny enough, a 3-day Ushers conference. Condition that I have is deafness and blindness combined due to a genetic condition. So I met many deafblind people, some from America and things like that. So I got lots of notes. And then with one on that one. Sorry, no, sorry. Yeah. So the dissertation, I was asked if I would like to form a breakaway from Deafblind UK to form Deafblind Scotland. So originally I was on the board of directors, and within 6 months of changing over from Deafblind UK Scottish branch to Deafblind Scotland, our membership grew from 180 members to 350 within 6 months. And as I was on the board, Drina asked if I would like to step down and work for Deafblind Scotland. And essentially, doing that degree, I created my own job. We created a company. So I'm still working for Deafblind Scotland 21 years later and loving every minute. And again, with that job, it's all about there's access to work. So access to work allows me 20 hours a week that I can have a guide communicator to help me out. If I'm going out around Scotland or anywhere else, I have a guide that enables me to get to the place safely. Also allows me to engage with the people, and while I'm engaging with meetings or whatever, they're there to support me, to encourage my my independence, if you like. They don't speak on my behalf. They don't tell me what to say or anything. I just do what I do, but they make sure that I'm getting the full information, the full picture. Because of my restricted vision and my hearing, I don't get everything. So they're actually telling me where people are, where things are in the room, then even change the room around, so it makes it easier for me to engage. So life is, with guides, are extremely important to me, and it's another way of me keeping me in my job and keeping me sane, if you like. Yeah.
The story continues in part 2, Coping Strategies. Alliance Live. Health and Social Care Alliance Scotland. www.alliance-scotland.org.uk